Hey everybody, I am bored, so I thought I'd do a book review, and why not start with one of my favorites, uh, The Incredible Hulk, What Savage Beast by Peter David. Um, oh boy. So before I get into the actual book, I have to do some explaining. Oh, beans. Um, I was introduced to this book by my friend Patrick when I was in high school. At the time, I was reading Supergirl by Peter David, and I had shown an interest in the so-called smart Incredible Hulk, where he kind of has the brain of Bruce Banner but the body of the Hulk. Um, and so he loaned me this book, and it blew me away entirely. Um, since then, Peter David's become one of my top 5 writers. Um, but it should come as no surprise to me that I like his work so much, because my very first Incredible Hulk comic, this one, doesn't that look great through my hazy camera? There we go. Um, but this was written by Peter David. And a basic history lesson about the Hulk. When he first showed up in comics, he was actually gray. Yeah. There we go. And could pretty much talk in complete sentences. It wasn't really Hulk smash. It was more like, you guys are jerks for shooting at me. And because the... Come on. Be a good camera. Thank you. Because the printing process at the time couldn't really do gray, Stan Lee and Jack Kirby decided to change him from gray to green. And, come on. The change was kind of, did anybody else see that? No? Okay. For 20 some years. And then, after 20 some years of You Wouldn't Like Me When I'm Angry stories, Marvel decided to go in a different direction. And so they brought on Peter David to kind of spice up what was going on with the Hulk. And one of the first things he did was, by the 80s, printing technology was better. So once again, Dr. Banner transformed into the Gray Hulk. Now, this was explained as, alright, the nitty-gritty I'm not going to get into because it takes too long and involves radiation. But this was explained as another personality in Bruce Banner's brain, or head, or whatever you like to call the Thought Keepers. So there was the Green Hulk, who was very childlike, and then you had the Gray Hulk, which was more like a crafty teenager. And after a while, it was decided, well, let's change things up more. And along comes this comic, Incredible Hulk 377. There you go. Where through hypnotism and good old-fashioned storytelling, the personalities were combined, because at the time Bruce Banner was having a mental breakdown, and it could have ended his life because, again, radiation. So the Gray Hulk and the Green Hulk were combined physically and mentally, but for the most part, Dr. Banner was in control, and so he became what was known as the Professor Hulk. There we go. And that was a good series of stories. That went on for years. It was cool because it was a fantasy of most fans, like, oh, just imagine if it was the Hulk's body with Bruce Banner's brain, but like permanent, because they had done that from time to time before, but it had never really stuck. It was always like, oh man, when's the shoe gonna drop where he turns back into, and then horrible catastrophe. But this time, it seemed like it was gonna stick. And along comes this story, also by Peter David. Alright. I just have to hold it still. Future Imperfect, where basically, oh come on, don't go off, there you go. A future version of the Professor in a post-apocalyptic timeline is just a despot, and he controls pretty much the world, and he is a right rat bastard. Basically, he's seen some unrevealed war of the superheroes, and people got wiped out by nukes except for his little fiefdom. And in order to stop him, a ragtag troop of rebels found Dr. Doom's time machine and went back in time to recruit modern-day Professor Hulk to take down what was called the Maestro. Because why wouldn't you call yourself the Maestro if you ruled the world and were the Hulk? And so that worked. How they defeat the Maestro is too good a twist to reveal here. But if you really don't care that much, just look on Wikipedia. So, during the 90s, there were a lot of prose novels about Marvel superheroes, which was where most of my Marvel knowledge came from, because I wasn't really getting Marvel comics in the 90s, because every comic seemed to be impenetrable to me. Spider-Man was a clone, and the X-Men had 50 titles, and Captain America was dying. It was it was a confusing time, to say the least, but with the novels, they were kind of standalone and gave you all the information you really needed. And that's where What Savage Beast comes in. And What Savage Beast is essentially a sequel to Future Imperfect. This little guy. And, oh my god, 9.5 minutes I've been talking. This is insufferable, guys. I'm sorry. But I'm going to power through. And sorry for the reflectiveness of this cover. I bought an autographed copy of this, and the cover was already librarianized, so it's super shiny. with this plastic cover. I'm glad it has, but for the purposes of this video, kind of a pain in the ass. You can see my little stickers over my Lenovo ThinkPad, which is what I'm using for a camera. Probably not the best commercial for Lenovo ThinkPad. Anyway, as usual for the Hulk in the story, he and his wife Betty are on the run from the government, because who wouldn't want to piss off the Hulk using our tax dollars? And he's the Hulk all the time, except when he gets angry and pissed off. He has this failsafe in his mind, so that if he ever becomes the Hulk personality, he reverts to Dr. Banner's body. So it's this 98-pound weakling with the brain of the Hulk. So not super dangerous, just kind of a pain in the ass, and you gotta wrangle him up until he calms down and becomes his Hulk self again. He and Betty are on the run. He usually works from home, solving equations over the internet for scientists and institutes and whatnot. And Betty works in Chicago. I forget what she does. I'm due for a reread on this, but long story short, Betty gets pregnant, and so Bruce decides, okay, I need to cure this Hulk thing once and for all. And fortunately, his friend Doc Samson, who I don't have an action figure of handy, I apologize. That's gonna kick myself about that later. Anyway, Doc Samson is a gamma-powered psychiatrist, which I've never said aloud before, and it tickles me. And they find a cure from a mysterious doctor, and the cure works for a while until this real piece of shit from the government named Talbot, who's a nephew of a previous thorn in the side of the Hulk, yada yada. And it turns out the doctor who cured him was a different version of the Maestro. And the Maestro transformed into his Hulklier form and kidnapped the baby that Bruce and Betty had. They actually had twins, but one tragically died because all the strength and gamma radiation went to one twin, and just all the lack of a better term, weakness went to the other twin, and it didn't survive. But the twin that survived, Brett, was gray, like the original Hulk. And the Maestro kidnapped it to the future, and the Hulk went to the future to try and find him. But by the time he got there, because time travel's messed up and imprecise, Brett was about 20 years old and had been raised by the Maestro to love and honor him. So Bruce had to find a way to get through to Brett to bring him home. And not going to give away the ending, but I wept like an orphan on Christmas when I read it. And this is one of those books for me that's my Catcher in the Rye. Mainly because I didn't read Catcher in the Rye in high school. I was in my 20s when I read it. I'm like, this Holden Caulfield's a little piece of shit. I'm sure as a teenager it would have blown my mind and like, yeah, people are phonies. But in my 20s, I'm like, this kid's life is great. Why is he bitching? Anyway. So yeah, that's kind of my meandering review and action figure showcase of The Incredible Hulk, What Savage Beast by Peter David, with each chapter has a great piece of art by George Perez, who drew Future Imperfect. And yeah, again, Peter David, great writer. In fact, Stephen King had him write the comics for The Dark Tower, and considering The Dark Tower is Stephen King's baby, and the fact they let Peter David write it should say something about Peter David's greatness. I will say, Peter, too many Star Trek jokes. I'm sorry, but my God, man. Anyway, yeah, this was a book review, but also some people in my circle of friends haven't heard my voice in like 3 years. So I thought I'd submit this for your perusal. Anyway, sorry about the editing and the lack of camera work. I'm not really doing this professionally. Just something I felt like doing. And I hope to do more. But, oh God, how many times have I gone, but, man, I'm not good at this. Anyway, I will talk at you hopefully soon. In the meantime, see if you can track this down, because all the parts involving this, Peter David explains all that in here. And I actually read that before I read Future Imperfect. So if you track down a copy, read it, enjoy it, and for now I'll say adios. God, I've literally never said adios. Oh, Lee.